Welcome to the D-Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the D-Shift podcast. And like always, we have an amazing guest on the show today. And I want to introduce you to Ken Miller. He is an author, a speaker, and a resilience coach. Ken has a background in nonprofit leadership, and he really has a commitment to helping people in recovery and transformation. And his message is going to resonate with anybody who's dealt with challenges in their life, because he really believes that no matter how far you have fallen, there's always a way to move forward. And what a positive message. So welcome, Ken.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Marty.
And I like to start every podcast with having you tell your story in your own words so that our listeners can really understand where your expertise and experience and just where your message comes from. So would you mind sharing with us a little bit about what got you to where you are now?
Sure. I'll give a short version of the story. I'm 62 years old, born in 1962. My mother was a white teenage prostitute. She was a runaway that got into prostitution. My father was the pimp and the drug dealer. And I didn't know this until maybe about 5 years ago. But I was put up for adoption at birth. And I did 6 years as a foster child. And I knew I was a foster child. I knew I was not wanted. I did not have a mother, and I was not loved. I was adopted by Irene and Sam Miller. Unfortunately, my father was an alcoholic and also a violent alcoholic. He ended up shooting my mom 6 times and came to shoot me at one point. That obviously did not happen. I grew up in Anchorage, Alaska. I was precocious as a child. I was a National Merit Scholar. I was accepted to Harvard. I went to Dartmouth College, Ivy League, and graduated at age 21 with a degree in fraternity with a minor in drinking. And I did 2 years outside of college in the corporate world, and I relapsed and spent the next 20 years on and off the streets, in jail, in the penitentiary, and institutions. I'm a 3-time convicted felon, spent many years behind bars, but September of this year, I'll be celebrating 21 years clean and sober. I am a businessman, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an author, I'm a speaker, and I have a story of resilience. I have a story of coming back from the setback. I have a story of being able to understand the vicissitudes of life itself and then being able to overcome it. Probably one of the most important things I want the listeners to hear is that I have a beautiful life. I have a beautiful life. And for so many decades, I did not have a beautiful life.
Yeah.
And nor was I a beautiful person. So.
Ken, thank you for sharing that. And it's so amazing how what looks like potential in life can easily not turn out the way that we think. And when I was listening to your story, I'm also adopted, although I was adopted as an infant, and I was adopted into a wonderful family. And, here we both went through the same experience. And unfortunately, you didn't have that strong supportive family. But how do you feel when you tell your story to people? How do you feel most people respond? Because, let's face it, you have had really, really a difficult life. Although there was moments of real opportunity there, I'm guessing.
Many times when I speak, it's one of disbelief. The disbelief is not what happened to me. It's that I'm willing to share what happened to me and those experiences. I had a lot of shame-based behavior. And for most men, and I'm not even going to say most Black men, we do not talk about shame-based behavior. Right? We do not talk about our foibles, our faults, and or our humanness. A lot of people are impressed by the truth and the transparency when I speak. I always have people come up to me afterwards and want to talk to me more. Always.
Right.
And I've always appreciated, I always try to give as much as I can within the parameters of the conference or the speaking engagement itself. And then I'm always, my big thing is to give back today, is to give back.
Right.
And because I've been blessed. I just cannot explain that enough, but I've been blessed. So anyway, that's a lot of times shocked, awe, you could say impressed. Um, and then let me say one other. There's another group that many times when I speak, I'll see people in the crowd or in the audience who are crying because I'll open doors that, not unfortunately, they have to open that door. This happened to me. Yeah, that happened to me too.
Right.
And it's very important. Many times when I see those individuals, I will go up to them after the talk, if I see them, and share with them or just talk with them and empathize when I see something resonated with you. If you want us to talk about it, I'm more than willing to listen. If not, I just appreciate you being here and that I see you and I acknowledge your existence.
Right. Yeah. And I agree because, you know, we've had a couple of people on the podcast who have been really open and honest and talking about these experiences, and especially with recovery and getting
Mhm.
through, addiction problems. And
Mhm.
interestingly enough, both of the previous guests that spoke about this were also men who came on the podcast. So
Wow.
I think that's really positive because I, well, for men and for women, though, to also hear, especially your story where you went through so much. I mean, it wasn't just the addiction, it was
Mhm.
incarceration, it was a very difficult youth, and then a very difficult time spent with your family where there was violence and all this stuff. I mean, it's like you had sort of every bad experience in your life, as opposed to most of us, which may have had one or two difficult
Mhm.
challenges. It seems like you've just had a whole lot. So how are you able to make that transformation for yourself, Ken?
Reflection, prayer, thinking, literally thinking cognitively, um, giving credence or truth to experience and fact.
Right.
Yeah, Ken, this happened to you. Yes, Ken, you did this. Yes, Ken, this person probably did not treat you well, but that is the truth. What can we do? These are the cards you've been laid. Okay. And it's interesting that things change over time. As a child, you don't know how absurd or how weird this is because it's done behind closed doors. Okay. Same thing in a marriage. A lot of stuff happens behind closed doors, and the public doesn't see this or know this. And you also don't even know that this is not correct. Okay. And I
Right.
could go down a couple avenues on this, but I'll just leave it at that. You don't know that this is wrong. One of the key components of we can call it recovery, but it's part of my book, Becoming Ken, who I am today. I'm not ex-addict. I'm not ex-convict. I'm not less than. I'm Ken. I'm a kind and gentle man. That's who I am today. But a big part of it, and again, there's so many avenues we can go down to, but a big part of it is forgiveness. I've forgiven every individual that's caused harm or pain to me or my loved ones. I have. I've forgiven them. And I don't do it because I'm a God or that I can, anoint you with forgiveness. I do it because it's the right thing of God, and it also makes me more well
Right.
when I get that forgiveness. So
Yeah, I
based on
love.
truth,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, I stepped on you there. I think we
No,
got
no,
a
no.
we got a slight little delay. I think that I've always heard this, and I really believe this, that forgiveness is not for the other person; it's for yourself. Because if you're carrying that anger and that animosity, that's eating away at your ability to be the best person you can be.
It's for three entities. There's three components to the forgiveness. And one of the components, yes, it works on me, but one of them also is the other individual. That individual, for whatever reason, was either damaged or hurt at that point. when they engaged in the activity that harmed you. Okay. So for me to say that that individual, and I have, I forgive you. I don't forget it and I still, remember it, but I don't harbor this emotion connected with the event or
Right.
circumstances, or even more, you as a person. I wish you success. I hope you have opportunity to deal with ever the pain or the underlying situation. I've said these words. Then there's also a relationship with self, relationship with others, and then a relationship with God. And if you so believe in a spiritual entity or a God, is the term I will use, I'm getting right with Him because
Right.
literally I believe He's forgiven me.
Yeah. So I appreciate that distinction. Now, one of the things that I know that you believe in and that you believe that is essential for that moving forward is to really face the truth. And I think so. Even if we take issues where there may have been domestic violence or some kind of abuse in a relationship, even if we set those aside or don't, there is a sense of, in most relationships, you make some choices that ultimately have an impact on how the relationship goes. And that may be choosing to stay after the first act of violence. That
Mhm.
doesn't excuse the person being violent, but it also, you did have a choice. There are choices that are made within every situation. What does kind of recognizing that truth, what does that do for a person when you're able to do that?
First of all, I truly believe there are innocents. Children in most cases have no causation in the violence that is done to them or the sexual impropriety that's done to them. They have no causation. That's just my,
No,
remember,
I
everything I
agree.
talk
And
about is my opinion. Okay.
thank you for clarifying that. And I should have
Yes.
said adults.
Yeah.
Yes.
Many
Or adults that
times,
have the capacity
yes,
to make
yeah, no
decisions.
problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Many times, though, let's talk about adults. And we're talking, many people, I've been through a divorce and I understand divorce. I had causation in a lot of what happened in that. And like you said, I had will to make changes or do something different. Okay. But many times because of my damage or my low self-esteem or my opinion of what I am worth, I felt like this is either my lot in life or that God is doing this to me or that I have to be loyal to a quote unquote concept, which is marriage, or concept, which is this partner. I obviously have changed that. But this is the thing. I can do this. I can see why. I know every reason why I've done every action. That's the truth part. First of all, I understand and see the action to the best of my ability or the circumstances, the event. And then I know my motivations in all of them. I also know, which is real important, what my reactions or actions afterwards were or were not. Understanding that has given me freedom because it gives power back to me. That was my choice. That was my
Right.
choice. I stayed in that, okay, and dealt with that pain. We used to have an old saying, get off the nail, get off the nail. I don't know if you've heard
Yes.
that story. Yeah. Get off the nail. Stop complaining. It must not hurt enough because you will not get off the nail. So, one of the things that I'm really big on is again, seeing what the facts are, what is the truth to the best. And a lot of times you need outside counsel and or trusted advisors to say, these are the facts as I see them. Can you give me your interpretation? And let's just get back to one other thing. An emotion is an opinion. An emotion is an opinion. It comes through your senses and you literally come up with an opinion, anger, happiness, joy, whatever it is, but it's an opinion. It's not fact.
Right.
Anger is not fact. Happiness is not fact. It's an emotion. It's an interpretation of through your senses of a set of circumstances.
Right. And I think that, and so I so thank you for saying that. And I
Mhm.
think that when you're right in the thick of a challenging situation, that that is not that's not the time that you might be able or capable of doing that process, but it's having the ability to reflect upon it and really get clear, like you say, on what were your motivations, what was the thoughts, what was the actions and reactions. And that's where that truth comes. I'm not, and I really think that, like you said, doing that and recognizing those then gives that power back to you. And I so appreciate that. What do you think? Let's say you've gone through this process, you've got your truth, you have a good understanding of what was going on, but you're still sort of feeling disempowered, disenfranchised, kind of. And I'm going to say this because I know I felt this way after my divorce, stuck in that victim mode. How do you get from, oh my gosh, this is all being done to me, I have no power, I have no control, I have no autonomy in my life, to then being able to say, I'm this resilient person that can take on life challenges and do a better job? That's like going from 0 to 60. So how do you do that? What are the steps that you recommend, or the process that you recommend people take a look at?
Well, I speak on this. I speak on resilience. And it
Right.
can be from divorce, it can be from financial setback, it can be from physical, whatever it means. How do we come back from the setback? How do we do that? The foundation is truth. The first thing we got to do is identify what is the problem. Okay. What is the situation? And the word I use a lot of time, what is the pain? What is the pain? Second thing I want to do is I want to start looking at what's my self-talk. What is my self-talk? What am I saying to myself? Is the self-talk based on the verb to do, or is it based on I am? One is guilt-based and one is shame-based. I'm guilty for staying in this situation. One is I'm less than. That's a shame-based. Once I've looked at the pain, the self-talk, and my part in this, I'm a big one believer in this, and we'll talk about different ones, but spiritual. Can I turn to a spiritual entity or an outside trusted person and become accountable to a different direction? I want to take small steps. I want to take small steps if possible. Sometimes we need to take big steps, okay? But we take small steps to validate my worthiness, to validate my worthiness. Another thing that I teach and talk to is get outside of self. Because if I'm in pain, emotional pain, it's about me. It's about me. Well, why don't you go down to the mission and serve a meal? Why don't you go down, to the women's shelter and talk to, if you're not in there, talk to one of the ladies in there, or do some volunteer work there, whatever it may be. But get outside of self,
Yeah.
because it's about my pain. It's my pain. And then, and a big one on this is with outside counsel, usually outside counsel, come up with a plan and then work the plan. What is the plan for me to grow from this? And
Right.
then the other thing, and we'll talk about this, take away the power of the secret. Take away the power of the secret. Yeah, he went outside the marriage with another woman. Talk to somebody about it. It can be a pastor, it can be a trusted friend,
Mm-hmm.
but get it out inside here, because you are now encapsulating that as many times being shame based. It's because I'm less than that he did this. No, he did that because he wanted to do that. I'm a big one on this. I can get a little passionate about this, but also, and this is going to take time. The forgiveness takes time. Oh, one other thing is I teach this thing called gap control. What I mean by that, the input comes in, he says something, she says something, does something, da da da. Can we put a space between the input coming in and our action?
Yes.
Because if not, it's a reaction. And many times we're doing it based on emotion, which is not truth. And then the last thing I'll say this is to be able to see that individual as a human that is flawed, or has done something that's maybe a flaw in your value interpretation of that action. But the person made a mistake.
Yeah.
I've made a lot of them, and so I can give humanness to others.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And Ken, that's just so That's just so empowering because it's all about what you can do. You don't have to rely on anybody else. Yes, you need some outside guidance and support, but you
Mhm.
don't have to rely, you can do this work. You've got the power within you. And, I've got to tell you how much that gap control is so important. That's one thing I work with my clients. Preparing them for divorce mediations, preparing them for conversations is taking things in, do some reality checking on what your response is going to be, and then make a choice rather than reacting. So I really do appreciate this. When you are talking to people, um, what is the time? This is the question I always get. So I'm going to put you on the spot because this is a tough one. What is a realistic timeline for somebody to go from that sense of feeling, to use your words, I'm at my rock bottom, to finding my purpose? And I know everybody's different, but I get this question all the time. How long? How long is this going to take me to get back to feeling really good about myself when I feel like I've hit my rock bottom?
It's unique to the individual. A lot of it has to do with how damaged you are. And I don't say that in a pejorative way. I'm not saying that you're bad. You're damaged. There's damage. And what the damage is your interpretation of the world is damaged. Your interpretation of the outside world and your interpretation of your worth and what we call efficacy of self, my
Right.
competency to do life. Okay. And am I lovable? Because I have all this evidence, quote unquote, that I'm not lovable. Yes, you are. You're a child of God. You are lovable. And anybody who's listening, I want to make sure you hear that. You're hearing it from one person you don't know, but you know me. In a way, you know me. You're listening to me. So for example, for me, I was very damaged, very damaged. 20 years on the streets. I mean, I was the panhandler on the streets and penitentiary, years in the penitentiary. I was damaged in my interpretation of the world, the threat of the world, and my interpretation of my worth because I had a long succession of bad decisions. So I expected that's all I would do for the rest of my life, which I did not expect to have too many more days on this earth when I went in because I was that damaged. So it took me, I would say 6 years to get to 80% of where I'm at today. And I want people to hear this too. After all that damage, I'm not working on me. I'm not working on me. I am cool with Ken. I'm a good person. I'm kind. I'm gentle. And so what does that mean? What do you do now? I just give back. I mentor young black men all over this country. I teach for free. I do podcasts like this just to share. I wrote a book. I speak on stages just to give back.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the other thing. It's all right to be well. That's another thing I want people to hear. It's all right to be well. You don't always have to have a problem. You don't always have to be the victim. And this is another one. When you're telling a story, are you the victim or the hero?
Yes.
Most of the time, I'm neither. I'm just a human. I'm just Ken Miller. I became me.
Right.
And sometimes I'm the hero in that instance. And sometimes I've been the victim of things, but I don't say I am a victim. I was a victim of this violence or a victim of this shame-based behavior, but I'm not a victim. And I'm not
Yeah.
a hero.
Yeah. Yeah. Ken, we could talk for forever. And I honestly can, because you are such an inspirational person, but not but and you also are very reality based, which I find, we tend to hear motivational speakers and they're very woo up there in the clouds. And it's just so wonderful to hear your really practical and lived approach to coming through extremely challenging situations. And that's why I thought your message was, first of all, I just admire what you're doing and all the work that you're doing, good work you're doing out in the world. But also, I think that your story is really one that people are going to go, yeah, that is really something that I want to do in my life. Now, you may not have big issues like Ken has had to deal with, but that doesn't mean they're not issues that you're dealing with. So this isn't a comparison deal. Like my pain is worse than your pain or my damage is worse than your damage. And that's why I love your message, Ken. I really do. So can you just tell us a little bit before we go to kind of the closing part, can you share a little bit about your book and I will make sure that that information gets in the show notes if people want to head on over and grab it. So tell us a little bit about Becoming Ken.
Well, Becoming Ken, it's a book. It took me almost 3 years to write. It was very difficult. There are times I wanted to give up, but I'm sort of proud that I came through with the process. And there's an integrity because I told people I was going to write this book. I've had people, hundreds probably of people say, you need to write a book. You need to write a book because they've heard some of the incidents. So it's one black man's journey from the Ivy League to prison and back again. And I am back and I'm back again. But really, it's a story, obviously, of my experiences as a child, young adulthood, college, and then adulthood. But it has lessons. That's one of the real key component. It has lessons after each chapter about what I learned and what I suggest or recommend as in dealing with these situations that I have dealt with throughout this journey. And then it's obviously it's a beautiful, and in a way it's a love story. It's about a story of a damaged child falling in love with just his mere existence as a adult. I'm a father, I'm a husband, grandfather, business owner, author, writer. Those are the things I've done. But the key thing, and this is the term I use, I'm a kind and gentle man. That's who I am. I was not that way for many, many years. So I believe it's a really good book. I've had great response from it already. Feel free, it's on Amazon if you'd like to purchase it. But the main reason I wrote it is so I can speak more, literally.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
can that and to be truthful to my word, which is I told people I'd write a book.
Yes, and so it just came out recently. I have it.
Hmm.
It's on order for me from Amazon. So as soon as I get it, I'm going
Thank
to
you.
definitely read through it. Ken, we've covered a whole lot of information. What do you want people to take away from this conversation?
Number one, number one thing I want them to take away is that you have value. You're a beautiful person, whoever you are listening. You have value. And I'm saying this, I know you because I know what it's like to be in pain. I know what it's like to feel less than. But I just want to tell you, you have worth and you are also worthy of love. And if you're on that fence as to what is the next best decision for me and my loved ones, because many times you have children involved, do what's the right thing for your loved ones and those that you are accountable and responsible for, including yourself. See yourself as a child and make that decision that I'm going to honor that individual, that child that's inside me by doing the next right thing. And sometimes it's not going to be without pain. I'm not saying this is not going to be without pain or discomfort, but this too shall pass, and that you have the ability and the worthiness to make that next right decision.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think that's a great way to wrap this up. Ken, one last question. What is the best way for people to reach out and find out more about you? Or if somebody's listening, they want to have you come and speak at an organization or event, what's the best way to do that?
You can visit my website, which is kenmillerspeaks.com. And if anybody wants to get a hold of me for any reason to speak with me or talk with me, I don't hide. Feel free to communicate with me at Ken Miller 84. That's my LinkedIn. And my email is ken@kenmillerspeaks.com.
Thank you, Ken. I will make, and thank you for being so open and providing that contact information. I'll make sure all of that gets in the show notes for people. So if you're driving, don't worry about writing this down. Just check the show notes when you get home. Ken, thank you for sharing your story and for giving us a really inspirational message today. I truly appreciate this and you.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Marty. You have a great show. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. And I want to thank everybody for listening in to the D Shift. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. And don't forget to tune in again next week. Thanks for listening and supporting the D Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.